everyone, this is Balsamo, your presenter for today's webinar, and today we'll share some tips on how to improve your InfoPath browser forms performance. And we'll start with our webinar goals. We want to make sure that we share relevant techniques that you can use in your daily battles with InfoPath, and we value your time, so we'll try to make things short and sweet for you. And we are real humans. We commit mistakes if we ever do. Thank you for your patience. And in the end, if you give us your contact info and fill out the feedback form, we'll send you links to learn more and some demo samples as well. And before I start, let me just hand over the mic to Alyssa to talk about our company and what we offer.
Thanks, Mel. Hi, everyone. It's Alyssa at Qdabra. I'm just here to tell you a little bit about what makes Qdabra such a great resource. First, we have a great community, InfoPathDev.com. This is an active forum with free support, product downloads, blogs, and is a great information resource. Next, we have a more urgent support option. It's our pay-as-you-go support packs. Simply give us a call or submit a request, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Qdabra also does consulting work for hire. If you want a Microsoft MVP's help on a project, simply contact us. We have lots of great tools and templates available as well. You can take them for a test drive with one of our free trials. And remember, we always have that 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. Qdabra can help you build a scalable, lasting solution as well with our web services. There is a free trial available for DBXL, and that is our database accelerator web service. So download it today, see how it can work for your company. And then lastly, just wanted to tell you about our training courses. So we provide assistance to those wanting to get a better footing in Microsoft InfoPath. We provide these classes both in person, and that's in the Seattle, Washington area. Otherwise, we provide them in an online webinar as well. Our next online course is actually on Monday, but the next one after that will be in August. And then the next in-person course is going to be in September. So, check out our website. Let us know if you want more information about that. All right, well, I'll hand the mic back over to Mel.
That's great. Thanks, Alyssa. And now we move on to our value proposition. All right, when you're designing your browser forms, optimizing performance should be an important objective for delivering the best possible form filling experience to your users. We talked about that in our past webinars, the InfoPath Beauty Spa. You want the form filling experience to be the best, right, for your users. And today, you'll learn about how to do just that. You'll learn how to manage Postbacks, so we'll show you how you can configure server-side Postbacks and know the common causes. We'll also share some good design practices for better performance, as well as some tips for complex forms if you want to use them in your mobile devices. And we'll start by talking about the browser display issues. They generally occur, of course, when the form loads and when the form is updated and redisplayed after a postback. So as form designers, we should be concerned in how quickly the form loads and how quickly it reacts to the user's input. And we'll start talking about postbacks. What are postbacks? You know that certain form controls, actions, and features require the browser to communicate with the server during the form filling session. And during this transmission, transmission and processing of the form data, the browser instance of the form must wait for a response and then re-render the updated form. So this entire communication cycle impacts both the browser side and the server side, as well as the network. Apparently, there is a limit to the number of postbacks a form session can handle. Just this grocery cart right here. It can only accommodate a handful of goods, right? So everything has limits. And if you encounter that limit in your browser form, you're going to get this error. If you examine the SharePoint logs, you'll see something like the number of postbacks has exceeded the maximum allowable value per session. And this value, by default 75, can actually be configured by an administrator. And you do that by going to the central admin page under configure InfoPath Form services, there is this section, thresholds, and this is where you specify or change the default number of postbacks per session, as well as the number of actions per postbacks, per postback, excuse me. And how do you actually measure the number of postbacks? We use a web debugging tool such as Fiddler. You can download it free from fiddler2.com. What it is, it's a free web debugging proxy which logs all the traffic between your computer and the internet. So what you do is you open your Internet Explorer, for example, and open up a form session, fill out a new form, and then as you go through filling out your form, you'll see that in Fiddler, everything gets logged, including the postbacks. So right here on this right pane, there is a handy feature. You're able to use filters, and you specify your specify the keyword postback for the filter, and then it should return just the results for the postbacks. And down here you can see I have 10. I don't know why my cursor is not showing. Okay, here we go. All right, so down here you'll see the number of postbacks, and what this tool does, it's useful especially if you're, for example, trying to fix your form, right? You know that your form has poor performance in the browser, so you go ahead and inspect your form and determine which needs changes and improvements, so this tool will help you. And the design checker as well helps. If you go to your InfoPath, open your InfoPath form in the designer and look at the design checker. If you check this box down here, it's verify on server, you're going to see a new section called browser optimizations. And under that, you'll see which controls actually send data to the server and when. So this third error here, or warning here, for example, it sends data to the server on insert or delete. If I click on that, I get this details window here, and this is probably happening on one of my repeating tables. So that helps. If you click on these warning messages, it actually takes you to that control, that specific control. And the way to control postback settings, as most of you already know, is to go to the control properties, and under the browser forms tab, it's set to only when necessary for correct rendering of the form by default. But those controls that don't actually have to send data to the server always, just set them to never. All right, and we'll talk about the common causes of postbacks. First, complex calculations. For example, you create an expression such as dot dot backslash dot dot backslash dot backslash my field 1. So you might be familiar with that expression, but when that is invoked in the form, because it requires traversing up the tree several levels from the current node, it must be sent to the server for evaluation. So you might want to use less complex calculations, and if your form does need complex calculations, then we'll talk about how you can deal with that later. Data connections, as you know, if you have several data connections that query on load especially, then that would reduce performance. It would increase the form load time. So data connections, you also want them to be triggered maybe on button click, and we'll discuss that later as well. Multiple binding happens when one piece of data in the form is bound to 2 or more controls in the same view. For example, you have a date picker that's bound to the report date field, and this date picker is placed in maybe 4 times in that one view. Apparently, if you change the value of the report date in one of the date pickers, although the others are conditionally hidden, probably, it still sends data to the server. And I haven't actually experimented if that's true, but that's just one possible causes, right? So yeah, out of the context binding, this happens when you're placing a control that doesn't belong to that group in the source tree. So for example, I have a repeating table with field 1 and field 2, and then I added a new column, field 3, which doesn't actually belong to that repeating group, so that might cause postback as well. View switching, of course, you know that view switching causes postbacks because the view, that new view, needs to render completely all over again, right? So that needs to send data to the server. Same with conditional formatting. The form needs to know when to hide, when to show certain sections, certain controls, when to disable them, and all that. Same with rules and complex XPath. So they have the same concept. And some good design practices to probably get rid of those issues is to first perform calculations and queries in button click. And this was what I was talking about earlier. So clicking the button does all the actions in one postback. And I just want to show you an example of this. So let me go to my Internet Explorer. So this is one example of the forms that does postbacks. You see, each time I select an answer, pick yes or no, it sends data to the server, and it doesn't matter, no matter how much I answer the rest, those answers are just gonna disappear. So imagine how long this form is gonna be and how much time I'm gonna wait as a user for this, for each control to send data. So that's a pain. Best practice is to, again, set that postback settings to never, like this form here. This one does calculations, so even though it does calculations, I can still fill out everything here, pick my answers. It shows me 0 as the score here and nothing as the total score here, but that's okay. I can update the total score on a button click, so I'll do that right now. Click this button, it sends the data to the server just once, and I get my scores. Right, so if this design is possible at all in your solutions, then do that. Otherwise, well, I guess your last option is to configure the limits, set it to maximum, like maybe 400, 500, I don't know. Going back to the slide here, don't use filter dropdowns. Although InfoPath allows you today to add filters or specify filters in your dropdown list boxes, don't do that. Instead, use data connections or data adapters that allow specifying pre-query filters like SharePoint 2010 or maybe InfoPath 2010 nowadays allow you to specify or set the value of the query fields before you actually query the list or the library to get filtered results. Same with REST web services and of course our own DBXL web service. We have QueryDB. It allows you to query your SQL database with filters, and same with Query SharePoint. Query your lists and libraries. And the third bullet here, to bind controls inside their own context. And that means, for example, you have field 1 placed under group 1. You actually want that text box, the field 1 text box, to be inside the group 1 section. If you know what I mean, but I hope you get the idea. And then for mobile forms, if you have a complex form, of course, the screenshot shows the expense report, which is a simple form. But if you do have complex forms, you don't want to use a separate form for mobile use. And I'll show you a demo. So again, this is the full version, and this is how it looks on the mobile phone. And let me demo that. So this is the full version of the expense report. This is what users will fill out in Internet Explorer in their computer. So this is a totally editable form. I can edit the fields, I can add expenses, and then I can submit. It submits to DBXL, and which is mapped to SharePoint. So it submits to both DBXL and SharePoint. But then I have a new, totally separate expense report form that's mobile version. And let me just open I'll remote into my phone here. You've seen me do this in my previous webinar. Fire up Safari. And it asks me to log in. Just hold on a sec. 1 second. Hopefully I did that correctly. I'm actually on safe mode. That's great. Okay, so here's the form that's loaded on my iPhone. So here you'll see a nicely designed form. I guess you saw this in one of my webinars before, this exact form, but this time the fields are actually calculated values. They use like expression boxes. So this form is totally read-only. I can't edit anything. So the purpose is, for example, I'm an approver. I just want to open the form to review it. And then there are buttons down below, approve, reject. So this form didn't have to load the entire XML from this full version at the back, right? So if I click approve or reject, it actually submits to another SharePoint library. And I just approve that. It's going to take me back to, where is it going to take me back? Yeah, to the library view. And if I look at my library here, this should get updated. Now it's approved. So this expense reports is my original library. This is where my actual expense reports get submitted, where the XMLs are stored, right? You'll see those promoted data. And then the mobile version of the form actually submits to just a separate library. And you can do, for example, add workflows in this library, like when the status is approved, email someone or, what have you. But the goal is, I guess you're thinking, why do I need to use a separate form for mobile when I can just add a new view in my existing form and unload, just switch to that view if the form detected a mobile device, right? Yeah, we tried that. I guess you can do that in simple forms like this expense report, but we tried that in one of our clients' complex forms, and what happened was the form just kept loading. The spinning wheel just kept spinning, and the form actually never loaded. So that's why we tried to come up with a workaround, and this is what we've come up. So this is a mobile version that I'm showing in my browser. What you're going to do is you're going to build the link. This is actually the same link that's just pointing to the mobile version of the form. So that's the template there. And at the end, I'm specifying the doc ID. That's the DBXL doc ID of the XML. Then this mobile version, show you in design mode. On form load, it first gets the input parameter, which has the doc ID as the key, and gets that doc ID and uses query documents node set, one of DBXL's web methods, to actually query the data. All right, but it actually doesn't load your doesn't store anything in the main data source. You're going to see that I only have the doc ID and the form name and status. These are what I'm promoting to the other library, but it doesn't actually have the report date, the employee name, and all that. These are all coming from my secondary data source. So that's just one tip if you happen to use mobile forms and you happen to have complex forms. And I guess that's it's a quick webinar for today. I'll open my questions box if anyone has questions. All right, I see one. Just a second while I figure this out. Okay. We have a question from Sandra. I've heard that browser-based forms cannot use some of the web services like user profile services in SharePoint Online. What are your thoughts? SharePoint Online is at 0365, but we've been using user profile services in our browser forms. Although based from experience, I get different results when you query the get user profile by name, for example, on load, versus you query it on a button click. I get different results, but it works. Got a question from Michelle Lopez. If a form is set up as a web browser form and is enabled in the form library to open in a web browser, why would it still open in the InfoPath client? Good question. There are some reasons why. Sometimes when you publish your form, it gives you a message at the end of the publishing wizard. It sometimes tells you that the form has been successfully published, but it can only be opened in the client. So that might be because the form may be, sandboxed and you didn't have site collection admin permissions. But to cut it short, there were issues with the publishing. There might be, and some other factors as well. Okay, from King Elder. You said to not use filter dropdowns. Do you have an example of how to use a data adapter to pre-query a filter? Sure. Okay. What did I do? Let me see if I have examples. Yeah, just like this mobile form I showed you. Instead of, let's see, I had form rules in here. Before I queried this data connection, I set this query field. So this is actually my filter already. I'm filtering the query before actually querying. So this is a long string, I know, but if you look here, it says filter equals. So I'm filtering the data. I just want to return the data where the doc ID is equal to this doc ID that I got from the input parameter, right? So then it will only return that node set, all right? Rather than I didn't have any filters. I just said, I remove this rule, and no, I shouldn't have done that. But I just said query data connection. Move this away. Query for data and query that. It's going to return the whole everything from my DB Excel. And let me think if I can do this using a SharePoint query. Walk you through, King. So I guess I need to VPN in. Just bear with me here. Okay. So I'd want to connect to my SharePoint library or list. And let's see. Solutions and webinar. Let's see if I can get this right. Let's say I only have one data there though. Give me a minute while I think this through. Survey. Okay, and let's see. Survey response. Do you have data? Okay, I'll just add a couple columns in here. And so you don't want to automatically retrieve data. Always check that. You can do that via rules or whatever. And then here, if you go here in your server response data connection, you actually have query fields. So you're going to have a button. For example, I'll add a new button. Add a new view first. And I'll add a new button here. And I'll specify fields value. I will set the query field of that survey response to, for example, I just want to get all the survey responses where the email address was mine, right? But I don't think there is any data in there, but that's the idea. You specify the query fields again, and then say specify the filter value, something like that, and then you actually query the data. So that's an example of you specifying filters, pre-query filters. Okay. I missed the point where to add the roles. Roles. Which roles? Sorry. Not sure about for reject and approve. Yeah, I actually didn't show any roles specification or workflow in this demo yet. Just showed the approve and reject buttons that when you submit it to this library, you can add workflow to this that checks status, the value of the status column. If it's approved, it, can send email to whatever you specify in the workflow. Yeah. All right. Does user profile services only work in enterprise? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about that, Michelle. Sorry. Can you demo a pre-query filtered SharePoint list? I just did, Stacy. Hope that suffices. Greg has a question. Are math calculations considered complex? For example, field divided by 12 times 50. That example isn't actually complex for me. When we say complex calculation, something that uses double eval, things like those. From Catherine, hi Mel, once you have approved the mobile version, how do you link that to the original? You can create a data view in a SharePoint page. You can create a SharePoint page and add a data view web part, and then just specify the links to whichever expense report form it's associated with. And if you need more help on that, you can send an email to support, and we can guide you through how you can actually configure the links to open up a form. Okay. From Atakan, is this a workflow from SharePoint, or is it possible to set up this in InfoPath? Which one? Again, I didn't have any workflows. From Imran, not specific to this topic. It's okay if you don't answer now. How does one become an MVP? Jimmy, one of our MVPs, is actually in this, also actually attending, and I don't. Maybe you can ask him or send him email. I don't know. I'm not an MVP, so I don't know how that goes. Again, from Michelle, lots of questions here. Yet again, Michelle, I've noticed that I can't use user profile services when customizing a SharePoint list using InfoPath. It throws an error when I try to open it until I remove that data connection. Is that common? Mind telling us what the error is? I guess a SharePoint list form has limits, maybe, and one of those limits might be the use of user profile services. But if you use an InfoPath form that's not a SharePoint list form, then I don't think there is any limit to using the user profile services. And if, by the way, for those people asking about user profile services, if you don't have any other options, you can try using like an Active Directory web service. Qdabra has it. All right. So from Naden, complex XPath filtering is in loading data from secondary connection. Oh yeah, really? Complex XPath filtering may not load in the browser and may not even deploy under admin approved. I haven't encountered that issue yet, Naden. Even though the forms I've been designing have complex XPath filters, I'm still able to admin deploy and they still load in the browser, although again that may cost a lot of postbacks. SharePoint lists work with UPS and queue rules, even workflow task forms. Yes, Nathan, you're right. They do work with queue rules. All right, I guess we don't have any other questions. And let me hand the mic over back to Alyssa to talk about our webinar kits, or new stuff.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to let you guys know, if you ever miss a webinar, we have our webinar kits for sale in the web store for $29. And basically, it's what, if you submit feedback after the webinar, you get the samples and the demos and the how-to docs. That would be what we're selling in the web store. So if you miss out on a webinar, check it out in the web store. Otherwise, if you don't see the webinar you're looking for, they're not all in the web store right now. We're hoping to get them out there soon. But if you don't see one that you want, send over an email to me. My email address is alyssa@qdabra.com, and I can work on getting that one in the web store for you. So certainly fill out the survey after this webinar, and I will send over the samples to you in a little bit. And thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you everyone for yet again wonderful experience. Yeah, thank you for your patience and for attending this webinar. Send us your feedback. You'll get today's presentation and some demo samples that we have. And I guess I'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.